In this movie, I'll show you how to test out which portions of an image are black and which are not black using another kind of adjustment layer known as threshold. Now, to see how threshold works, go ahead and turn off all the layers but horse by Alt or Option clicking on the eye in front of that layer, and then go up to the layer menu, choose New Adjustment Layer, and choose the threshold command. And I'm going to go ahead and call this layer Tester, because all we're using it for is to test the image. It's not actually an integral part of the composition. And then I'll click OK. And notice what we have here is this single slider. And so basically what it's saying is anything brighter than a certain value is going to turn to white, and anything darker than a certain value is going to turn to black. Now, we're going to get into this more in a future chapter, but I want you to know that luminance levels are measured from 0 to 255. 0 is black, and then 255 is white. Black also happens to live over here on the left-hand side of this graph, which is known as a histogram, and white lives over here on the right-hand side. So at this point, I've got a threshold value of 128. So I'm saying anything that's brighter than medium gray should be turned white, and anything darker should turn black. If I go ahead and reduce that value by dragging the slider triangle over to the left, then I'm going to brighten my image significantly. And that's because now I'm saying the threshold level is 40, which is a very dark gray. And so anything that's darker than that dark gray is turning black, and anything that's brighter is turning white. And so we're getting this kind of Xerox effect right here. All right, I want to go ahead and add this adjustment to all the other adjustments as well. And so to turn all the layers on, I can't Alt or Option click on the eye in front of the horse layer this time, because that's just going to turn off that tester layer. And then if I Alt or Option click again, that's just going to turn the tester layer back on, because that Alt or Option click is a toggle. So to turn the other layers on, the easiest thing to do, as opposed to clicking in front of each one of them, is just click and drag up the stack like so. And that allows you to just quickly turn a bunch of layers on all at once. And then what I want to do is double click on the thumbnail for the tester layer in order to once again bring up the properties panel. And I'm going to crank this threshold level down to 1, which is to say anything that's darker than 1, which is 0, by the way, and that's it, and that's black. So anything black will remain black, and anything that's brighter than black will turn white on screen, so I can see exactly where my problem areas are. But I'm pretty confident that all of this stuff is not brighter than black. The reason too much of the image is showing up white here is because the tester layer is located below the B&W layer. If I go ahead and drag it to on top of the B&W layer and drop it like so, then I can see that very little of the image has any problems. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and click on the brushwork layer to once again make it active. You want to make sure that your brush tool is selected over here in the toolbox. And then go ahead and zoom in on any details you like, for example, here inside the horse's snout, and paint those white areas away. And so just go ahead and click if you want to, or brush if you like. Notice that these areas right here, I would say, are gaps in the mane, so we want to leave those alone. This, though, probably wants to go away. And we've got a little bit of white up front there on the horse, and we've got this area. Now I want to make my brush bigger, and I'm going to do that by right-clicking inside the image window once again. I'll increase my size value to 100, which looks good, and I'll go ahead and paint this stuff away. And by the way, when I say I raise the value to 100, that's 100 pixels, incidentally. I think I'll click that right there to get rid of that little detail, and then I'll zoom in on the hooves, and you can see that we've got some problems. Now, I'm going to throw in a keyboard trick here. This is a trick that allows you to increase and decrease the size of your brush on the fly. Do you see those square bracket keys next to the P as in Paul key on an American keyboard? Those guys allow you to increase and decrease the brush size. So if you press the right bracket key, you'll make the brush bigger. And if you press the left bracket key, you'll make it smaller. And I'm going to press that left bracket key quite a few times in order to get the brush down to about 15 pixels. And you can see the brush size listed up here on the far left side of the options bar. And now I'll go ahead and click right there, let's say, and I'll shift click over there and shift click down here as well. And maybe paint in that detail, paint there. And when I say paint, we're just really clicking in order to get rid of these little dots here and there. You don't want to go too far with it, by the way. And if you make a mistake, just go ahead and press Control Z or Command Z on the Mac in order to undo the mistake and move forward. And then we've got some stuff here too in the front hooves. So I'll go ahead and paint them in. I just can't decide whether I'm going to call these guys hooves or hooves because frankly, both sound bad to my ear, but I suppose either is correct. Anyway, looks to me like I got everything taken care of inside the horse. And the great thing about this trick, bringing out all the stuff that isn't black, is that way you can really see what you're doing, because sometimes when you're trying to paint in these tiny details, it's hard to tell them apart from dust that's actually on your screen. So you spend a lot of time trying to dust things off and then paint again and so forth. Anyway, this tester layer removes all ambiguity. Then when you're done with it, as we are now, you can just turn it off. You don't have to throw it away because we're going to need it later, incidentally. But actually, I think I forgot a detail. I'm going to go ahead and turn the tester layer back on there, and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm not seeing any shadow, and that's because the tester layer is hiding it. If I turn the tester layer back off, you can see that we do have a little bit of a shadow. You can decide whether to keep it or not, but if you want to get rid of it, then go ahead and swap your foreground and background colors, and you do that by clicking on this little swap icon, this little double arrow icon right there, and notice that it has a keyboard shortcut as well of X. And so if you either click on the icon or press the X key, you'll switch the foreground and background colors so that the foreground color is now white, because after all, the brush tool always paints in a foreground color. That was pretty sloppy, so I'll just go ahead and undo that and zoom in a little more. Click there, shift click a few times around the hoof like so. And now I'm going to increase the heck out of the size of my brush, and I'll click right there in order to establish the beginning of the brush stroke, and I'll shift click way out here to paint a straight line across the shadow. All right, now let's see what we got by pressing Control 0 or Command 0 on the Mac. I want to make sure I got rid of all that shadow and there's no specks out here in the white portion of the image. And so I'm going to turn the tester layer back on, double click on it to bring up the properties panel, and I'll drag the slider triangle all the way to the other side to 255. And that way I'm saying if the luminance level is 255, which is white, then the image will remain white. If it's any other color, anything darker, it's going to turn black. And that shows me that I have indeed taken care of that shadow. Because if I were to turn a brushwork layer off for a moment, we can see the shadow turn black right there. If I turn it back on, the shadow entirely disappears, at which point I can now safely turn that tester layer back off. And that's how you can tell which pixels are something other than absolute black or white using a threshold adjustment layer here inside Photoshop.